If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, hit me with the subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I love your comments. Comment down below. Tell me what you think of the videos.
Unfiltered with Matt Farnsworth.
I have heard the term sobriety so often. All over Instagram, all over the place, we hear people say, I'm sober, sobriety saved my life, being sober has saved me. And that's awesome. But sober is just a word that means not intoxicated. Sobriety is just a word that says, I'm not drinking. It has nothing to do with actually being emotionally well. All you're saying is I've taken away the chemical, which is cool. You haven't had this chemical in a really long time. That's great. That's good for you. But what caused you to need that chemical in the first place? What were the emotions that were wreaking havoc on your life that you need to deal with? Because I know a lot of people that when they take away the chemical, they're even worse off than they were before, because now they no longer have that crutch to lean on to feel good. And so emotional sobriety is really what you want to talk about when you're talking about sobriety. You want to say, I've become emotionally well because I've handled the emotions that once caused me to want to use drugs and alcohol obsessively. If I can take that energy from using and I can push it toward success after I manage these emotions that have caused me these problems, you're going to see that your life is going to take off. It is going to skyrocket. You are going to have so much success that you won't even know what to do. You won't even know what to do with yourself. And you know what? If you're emotionally well, you will have gratitude about that success. It won't matter. If you make $10 million, you should still be the same person that you are. It shouldn't matter. You shouldn't have to show everybody all the money that you have and the nice car you bought and the beautiful home and all of those things. I don't have to do that. It's not necessary because I'm emotionally well. And so emotional sobriety is really where we want to go. How do you become emotionally well? What do you do? What skills can you use to achieve emotional sobriety? You got to understand what's going on inside. You got to be able to introspectively look inside and say, what are the things that cause me problems? What am I insecure about? Was I bullied as a kid? And now every time I enter a social situation, I feel insecure and I can't, communicate and become a part of the environment or the group because I have insecurity because of something that happened to me when I was young. So what do I do in a situation like that? I have to, first of all, recognize it. And then I have to start to change my thought process, the patterns of how I see myself. I'm not a victim, right, anymore. You have to start to not see yourself as a victim of that bullying scenario. It was just something that happened. It was a time and place. And you have to reframe how that event took place and what you were at fault for, and that you're not that person anymore. That is not who you are. When we look back at who we once were, we have to identify the spots and the points when we had this type of abuse or something that happened to us that caused us to have an issue, to have trauma. And we need to know what that is, and we need to identify it. We need to work through that if we want to become emotionally sober. There is no other way, because if you stay sober for a while and you don't manage that trauma, you don't look at it and you don't say to yourself, I need to deal with this, then you are going to eventually be overcome by that trauma again. Something is going to trigger you, whether it's a relationship and a breakup or a death in the family or some kind of financial loss. It's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt bad because you're ripping off that scar and you're just tearing it open, and it's never been completely cauterized. It's never been completely healed. And therefore it's going to hurt sometimes even more because you haven't dealt with it. You've got to. If you want to become really sober and you really want to feel good and you really want to have a great life, you want to have serenity in your life, which we all do. I want to have serenity in my life, and I have worked very hard to have it. But I had to say to myself, hey, what do I need to do instead of go outside and smoke a cigarette or grab a drink or smoke weed or obsessively watch TV and veg out? What do I need to do instead of that? And you got to get a list of potential options that will work for you. There's so many options out there available to you that you could run to. I mean, you've got the options of just simply reading a book. You could play a sport. You can go to a movie. You could go bowling. You could join a bowling league. You could go and start rowing. I mean, look, people, the idea is that when you have triggers that happen in your life, when you involve yourself in activities like weightlifting, when you involve yourself in activities like a social club or a group or you take up a hobby that makes you feel good, you do gain self-confidence. When you sit around worrying and wondering about what is going to happen, you are putting yourself into a very dangerous state for a relapse, especially if you're sober and you're trying to stay sober. And by the way, one of the dangerous things about getting sober and saying sobriety or sober is that it immediately makes you feel better. That's the scary thing about saying, I'm sober and I'm great, without working on yourself, because you do feel better. You do have more energy. You do look better. You lose a little bit of weight. Your body starts to look better. You've got more focused energy in your brain. You can talk better. You can communicate better. And then you start to get cocky. And that really happens to almost everyone if they don't get that gratitude and start working some kind of, program. I'm not saying it has to be AA. I'm not saying it has to be a therapist. It's whatever works for you, but you have to be working on something. One of the easiest ways to get drunk and to relapse is to get too confident and think it's fine. I got this handled. Very easy to slip. And if you slip, well, you have to say to yourself, hey, I slipped. You got to stop yourself before it becomes this major relapse where you're back in it. And a lot of us have been there and it does suck, but that's all because going back, we didn't deal with the root issue of the emotional breakage that has not been fixed, the trauma and the scarring left behind. And the only way to clean that up is to be able to look back, own your scars, and start to work on them.